In 1999, the Swedish game development company Refraction Games released Codename Eagle, a war-based first-person shooter set in an alternate history timeline featuring expansive outdoor environments and a multitude of usable vehicles. The game received mixed reviews but managed to pique the interest of a fellow Swedish game development company known as Digital Illusions Creative Entertainment, acronymed as DICE. Refraction Games was later acquired by DICE in 2000, and using the in-house Refractor engine, the expanded team began development of a successor to Codename Eagle. Battlefield 1942 was released in 2002 and was an instant success. It was built upon the same formula and many of the concepts introduced in Codename Eagle, but instead featured a more realistic and historically accurate setting. Set in World War II, it featured massive open battlefields, a class system, multiple game modes, and a vast variety of vehicles and weapons. While you did have the ability to play against bots in single player, the focus and main attraction of the game was the unscripted and chaotic nature of the massive online 64-player battles. Battlefield 1942 was no doubt a pivotal moment in online multiplayer history. 2 years later, in 2004, the company released the first of many sequels in the form of Battlefield Vietnam. Battlefield 2 became the third installment in the franchise and was released in 2005 to critical acclaim. This time the war switched from historical reenactments to a fictional modern setting. This new direction proved so successful that most Battlefield games from here on out would focus solely on modern military combat, though a few exceptions slipped through the cracks. Battlefield Bad Company was the first game in the series to feature a fully fledged single-player campaign, as well as destructible environments thanks to the newly developed Frostbite engine. And the upcoming Battlefield 1 will be the 15th installment in the franchise, and the first to take place in the First World War. Given that DICE is a Swedish game developer, there's a ton of Swedish-related Easter eggs and references hidden throughout the franchise. And given the fact that I'm Swedish myself, why not cover a few of them? Claymores in Battlefield 2 as the text "Denna sida mot fienden" printed on the front, which is Swedish for "this side towards the enemy." In Battlefield 3, the rolling text on the MCOM stations is actually a Swedish folk song called Ack Värmeland du sköna, or Värmlandsvisan, and sounds like this. Ack Värmeland du sköna, du härliga land, du krona bland Svea rikes länder. At various locations in multiple installments, it's possible to find Easter eggs in the form of tiny sandcastles with a small Swedish flag planted on top. The sandcastles in Battlefield 3 also include a Norwegian flag to celebrate the increase in Norwegian developers on the team. The absence of a Danish flag is also cause for celebration. At various locations in Battlefield 4, you can find pieces of paper from the Swedish tax agency. You can also find beer bottles with the brand label Bakis, which is slang for hungover. The phrase "stor låda med saker i" can be found printed on the side of various wooden crates, which translates to "large box with things in it." After a patch was released for Battlefield 4, a maypole could be found on the community test environment version of Hainan Resort. The maypole is a reference to Midsummer, which is one of the largest holidays celebrated here in Sweden, and will also trigger a common midsummer carol.
Sverige.
As previously mentioned, following the acquisition of Refraction Games in 2000, the team began development of a game that would later be released as Battlefield 1942. However, the Battlefield franchise could have been very different, as a military first-person shooter set in World War II was not the initial concept for the game. Between 2000 and 2001, DICE worked on a title known as Urban Combat with a focus on, well, urban combat, and was essentially a cops and robbers game. Multiple early prototypes were developed, but nothing was ever revealed to the public. And while the game worked on paper, the team could never get the concept to work in practice, so the game was eventually cancelled in favor of a military shooter. Now, as some of you might have already guessed, this idea and these early prototypes would almost a decade later serve as the inspiration for Battlefield Hardline. Some of the radio chatter and miscellaneous quotes heard during gameplay in Battlefield Bad Company 2 are actually taken from real-life military communications. For example, these lines can be heard while operating a UAV. These samples were extracted from US military footage of a strafing run in Iraq.
If you find a bad guy, I'll get you ice cream for dinner. Any movement?
I had one guy trying to that's where I re-engaged.
Alright, I don't see any movement.
In a similar fashion, the teaser trailer for Battlefield 3 includes a voice clip of someone yelling "holy shit" in panic.
Holy shit!
This was taken from an actual recording of a US Air Force pilot evading multiple incoming surface-to-air missiles.
Holy shit! North Sam Luncheon.
Soon after Battlefield 4 was released, keen-eyed players noticed multiple hints which alluded to a prehistoric megalodon shark being included as an Easter egg somewhere in the game. It was eventually discovered that if 10 players gathered around a buoy on the map Nunchas Strike, this happens. However, certain hints suggested that a similar Easter egg could also be found on the map Parasol Storm. For example, this hint on the map Lumphini Garden shows an outlined map of Parasol Storm along with the phrase "the monster is real" written in Chinese. Another hint found on the side of a metal crate depicts a rebus that reads "Parasol Storm plus something equals Megalodon." Avid fans continued to search for this elusive Easter eggs for several months, but still came up empty-handed. Which is not surprising, as in early 2015 it was revealed by a DICE employee that the Megalodon Easter egg on Parasol Storm had never been activated, as it had never been fully completed and could thus not be triggered in the first place. While DICE had initially intended to complete the Easter egg, it was eventually deemed too resource demanding and too similar to the Easter egg on Nunchas Strike, and thus all related assets were eventually removed from the game. However, thanks to the community test environment version of the game, the incomplete Easter egg was later included in the CTE version of Parasol Storm. To trigger the Easter egg, you had to land on a wind turbine, get struck by lightning, climb a palm tree, and finally shoot a mysterious light in the ocean. If done correctly, a UFO will then appear inspecting the surface with a searchlight before plunging into the ocean. Only then will the Megalodon surface from beneath the depths. In the third mission of the single-player campaign in Battlefield 3, there's a sequence in which you have to stab a rat with your knife. The animal rights organization known as People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, acronymed as PETA, condemned the sequence, writing in a press release that the game treats animals in a sadistic manner. They also claim that this type of violence has a brutalizing effect on the young male target audience. Out of all the things in the Battlefield franchise, this is where they draw the line. I mean, it would be somewhat understandable if the protagonist casually interrupted otherwise perfectly normal missions to stab some rodents every now and then.
In about half an hour, this place is gonna be every fucking man for himself. Come on, let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, you know what? I just forgot to do something.
Now stand back, I gotta practice my stabbing.
Misfit, this is Misfit.
But no, you actually have to kill the rat, because if you don't, you get shot in the face. Then again, PETA once got mad at Obama for swatting a fly, so their opinions are practically invalid at this point. A select few weapons in Battlefield Hardline and one pistol in Battlefield 4 have a unique reload animation that have about a 1 in 10,000 chance of being activated. This is the reload animation of the Unica 6 in Battlefield 4. And these are all the unique reload animations in Battlefield Hardline.
Suspect neutralized. Get these guys off me! They got me pinned down!
Got a guy over here.
Before the announcement and subsequent release of Battlefield 2142 in 2006, DICE included a few references to the upcoming title in Battlefield 2. For example, a vehicle on the map Midnight Sun features a license plate with the number 2142, and a wristwatch on a billboard displayed the time as 2142. Now, subsequent titles in the franchise have included similar allusions to a possible sequel to the game. For example, on the map Operation Riverside in Battlefield 3, you can find this futuristic drone near the edge of the map, and in both Battlefield 3 and 4, you can find these plastic containers with the number 2143 printed on the side. Then there's the fact that the entire Final Stand DLC for Battlefield 4 is practically a distant prequel to 2142. Now, given that Battlefield 1942 received a sequel in the form of Battlefield 1943, many have assumed that these findings mean that Battlefield 2142 will at some point receive a sequel in the form of Battlefield 2143. However, DICE has neither confirmed nor denied the rumors, and thus we're left to speculate. Even though Germany in Battlefield 1942 is based on the Third Reich, references to fascism, Nazism, or Adolf Hitler is nowhere to be found. For example, iconic Nazi symbolism such as the red and white swastika flag has been replaced by a modified version of a flag used by the German Empire. The cross in the middle of the flag, which can also be seen elsewhere in the game, resembles a symbol known as the Balkenkreuz, which was used by the German military. All of this was done in order to release the game in Germany, as Germanic law is very strict about the use of Nazi symbols. While the Megalodon Easter egg is quite spectacular, it's far from the most complicated. One of the most elaborate Easter eggs in all of Battlefield, and definitely the most intricate Easter egg I've ever seen myself, can be found on the map Dragon Valley. As far as I can tell, most of this was uncovered and pieced together by a popular YouTuber known as Jack Frags, so this is nothing more than a showcase of what other people have already found. Okay, the Easter egg begins with 7 minuscule buttons hidden across the map. One is located underneath a concrete block, a second under water, a third under a walkway, a fourth behind a furnace, a fifth under a rock, a sixth on the edge of a building, and a seventh is located inside a tree. I don't know how it's inside the tree. Each button controls a random number of 20 lanterns attached to the ceiling of a building in the center of the map. The lanterns can be toggled on or off, so it can be assumed that all 20 lanterns need to be lit in order to progress. But it's actually quite difficult, as more than one button can control the same lantern. So if I press this button, one of the lanterns is turned off. But if I then press this other button, the same lantern is switched on again. But after a few hours of back and forth, it is actually possible to light all 20 lanterns. This will activate a hidden keypad next to the building. Pressing any key on the keypad will cause the lantern above to blink. This is actually Morse code, and once translated it reads, "When night falls over the old factory, a secret lurks in the openness of the north woods. Multiply the letters of the longest word and the one after it to form the code." This cryptic message is a reference to the map Zavad Graveyard Shift, and under a large rock along the northern edge of the map, a strange sound can be heard. After increasing the speed and applying some noise reduction, it sounds like this. This is a sample taken from the animated series Battlefield Friends.
Birdie legs, little birdie legs. I got little birdie legs.
Hey, what are you doing?
So back to the clue, if we take the longest word and the succeeding word from the lyrics, we get little birdie. We obviously can't multiply letters, so if each letter is replaced with its corresponding numerical position in the alphabet and each number is sequentially multiplied, we get 83980800000. Inputting the code into the keypad will trigger yet another Morse code message. This time it reads, "To claim your prize, now join a ranked conquest large game. Stand at the west side of the shaft of the northwestern water tower for 2 minutes, then use this individual code there." If we head over to the water tower and then wait for 2 minutes, yet another button will appear. Interacting with the button will activate yet another keypad. As we input the final code received in the final Morse code message, the Easter egg has finally been completed. After all that hard work, you unlock a unique camouflage known as Dice LA. What I love the most about this Easter egg is that many of the codes and solutions will be different in every playthrough. So to complete the Easter egg and to acquire the camo for yourself, you must go through the entire process on your own. It's gonna be really interesting to see what lies hidden in Battlefield 1.